Jim, welcome to the Awesome Marriage Podcast. I am so excited for this podcast to spend time with you and love what you do. And just thanks for saying yes to being on the podcast today.
And I appreciate the invitation, Kim. It's an honor to be a part of it. And I'll tell you what, I'm in a marriage that has been hard earned and fought for.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of us, if somebody ever told me that they coasted or they never fought, I'd think, well, you're just living in separate houses, probably.
Yeah, those couples usually get divorced.
That doesn't work. Well, let's just, for people that may not know a lot about you, background about you, your marriage, some things like that to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in a basically a non-church type of environment. My wife was born and raised in that kind of environment. We came to Christ around college age. So we married. We had a very fast relationship. I told her I loved her on the first date. My kids said, "You got no game, Dad." I go, "Who got the girl? Where'd you guys come from?" But we were married 9 months later. We just jumped right into it because we didn't want to live together before we were married because we were a Christian couple. We didn't want to have sex before we were married, but we just didn't want to wait around either. So we jumped into marriage, and we laugh now when we speak. We'll speak and talk about our marriage, and she'll say, "Man, I married my dream guy, and I woke up in a nightmare." And I'll say, "Man, I married an angel, and I woke up with Satan." And we just had a rough. I just thought her job was to serve me. I had no idea about what Christian marriage was about. And, I found out after we were married, she didn't cook. Thank God I knew how, and I was a cook in college. And, I couldn't use certain pillows, and I couldn't use the decorative towels, and I couldn't use the duvet cover. I didn't know what a duvet cover was.
I don't think many men
No,
do.
and so she made me sleep in my college pillow, which God only knows what was on that.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just really, really struggled. We did not like each other at one point, Kim. I just confess, I asked God to take her out because I didn't want to divorce her. I'm like, take her out, God, strike her with something. And I was a pastor at the time when I prayed that. I mean, I was a pastor. I was a football coach. I kind of looked like I kind of was portrayed this man image, and I was in a hard marriage. And it wasn't until I was at an event and God spoke to my heart and told me to outlove and outserve my wife. And I, with disdain in my voice, confessed and testified to the church I was going to do that. And I started making her coffee every morning. Little did I know her love language was acts of service, and it completely transformed our marriage. Well, it transformed our marriage, but into a marriage where we actually loved each other, but it's been hard work ever since. And 32 years later, we are still working real hard with our marriage.
But you're working at it. That's the thing. And I think you begin to see benefits of it. You can see rewards along the way. So, and you guys have had 3 boys, and they're all grown now?
Yeah, they're all grown. We've got one turning 30 next week. We've got one that just turned 27 and one that's going to turn 26 here in July. No, he'll be 28. So we'll be 26, 28, and 30.
Wow.
So yeah, they're great young men. I love being around them. They are my hunting partners. They are people we spend a lot of time with. And so we're going to celebrate my middle son's having his first baby, and we're having their baby shower in our man bath, or whatever you call it, will be Saturday. Then after that, we're going to go bowling for my other son's 30th birthday. So we'll all be together. So we just have, it's been a sloppy, messy ride, raising kids.
Oh yeah.
And in that stress bubble. And, but once on the other side of it, we're able to reap the rewards of apparently doing things mostly right. Mostly they have damage, trust me, but mostly right.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Do they live close?
Yeah, they're all, we kind of live in the middle of a triangle. So
Okay.
They're all kind of around us. They're all about an hour, 15 minutes away. And we're really, it's really important for us to stay close to our kids. We would love to move out of our area, but we will never do that as long as our kids are close. Because I think, in Job 29, Job said he was remembering his past, and he said, when I was close to my kids. And I think that's really important that we need to stay close to our kids, because those kids are producing grandchildren. Those grandchildren need grandparents. And I think as often as we can, I know it's not, kids move out of the area, but for us, it's really important that we stay close to our kids, help our children raising their children, just like our parents helped us.
I agree. We're blessed too that our kids live within a few miles of us. And
wow.
So we get to see them and our grandkids a lot. And it's been great to watch my son and daughter grow up and be parents.
Yeah.
And then to have our grandkids close is really good. So,
It's rich. It's
that's
it's
awesome.
rich. Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's talk about men in the arena, how it equips Christian men in the stress bubble. So let's talk about what is a stress bubble.
Yeah. So, our target audience, I'm going back to the time of my life that I thought was the most trying, the most exhausting, the time where I'm trying to figure things out. So when I got married, I was 26 years old. By 28, I had my first son. My youngest son, excuse me, did not leave the house until I was about 52 or 53. Now, probably 54, right in there. So we call this age, this time period of life when a man is raising children, he's married and raising children. We call that the stress bubble. So if you look at a number line, you've got this straight chronological number line. All of a sudden you hit like 25, 30, get married, start having kids. There's this massive bubble of your life that forms. And then around 55, you kind of flatline it. I mean, I know it's not accurate a little, but sure. There's this massive amount of stress when men are trying to fit as much as they can into their time frame. Their capacity is stretched thin. It just creates a lot of stress in there. And it's very important during that time that a man does things right, because everything that happens after that, his marriage, his children want to be engaged in his life, his grandchildren, everything that happens after that stress bubble is determined by what happens in the stress bubble. Mm. And so we wanted to go back and help that audience. Right now, they're the Generation Z and Generation Millennial. And so we want to help those guys who are very much different than my generation, but we want to help them because we all have one thing in common. We all have either been through or are in the stress bubble. And so I've learned some things that I think have helped me. And I think for the most part, my marriage is thriving. My kids are thriving. So I believe I can go back and help guide these guys through that stress bubble with things that I've learned, or experts like you'll come on our show in a couple months, have learned along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of our role.
Yeah,
is
for
to
sure.
do that. It's the... a guy a good friend told me a long time ago, he said, everybody needs a Paul and a Timothy in their life. They need somebody to mentor that mentors them, and then somebody to mentor. And I think we need to pass on the things that we have learned, especially the hard things. I think it doesn't any good if we're not honest with them, if we just want, oh, yeah, I did it all right, and things like, well, no, I didn't do it all right. None of us do it all right. But we learn, and God teaches us. And then we have something to share to either help them not make the same mistake or be able to say, yeah, you made it, but you're going to be okay. That.
Well, the funny part is whether we tell our kids that we made mistakes or not, they're still noticing.
Oh, yeah.
Especially during those teen years, early 20s. I was a superhero, and then my kids started, entering adolescence. They started realizing, wow, well, Dad, that hurt. When Dad said that wasn't good. Or where was Dad when I was doing that? And so they're seeing things, I think guys kind of move through 4 phases of fatherhood, right? We move from this father fidelis phase where the dad is just there. He needs to be there and engaged. And then father figure phase where we need to be an example and a model. And then when the kids leave the house, we move into this friend phase where now our kids want to be around us. They want to do vacations. They want to interact if we've done it right. And then finally, this father forever phase where we're enjoying legacy of our children raising children. And so, we move through these phases and we have to do things specific to each phase. And that stress bubble, these guys are in that father fidelis phase or in that father figure phase. And it's very important because their children will be watching them making decisions on the future based on how the dad raised them and was available during that stress bubble.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we forget that we're their textbook. They learn
Absolutely.
everything about being a man, husband, father. They learn from what we do.
Well, and that's part of the problem is that so many of these young, men and women have been raised without a father in the home. I think it's like 50% now will not be with their father up through age 18. So now they're trying to rewrite a script, but they don't know what the play is, right? So they're looking to guys like me and you to say, they're saying, hey, guide us through this. We need help. And so that's why guys like you and I exist, to help guide these younger people through this bubble.
And it's so, I love it's so rewarding to me when you find a guy that's hungry and that you kind of, I say some things and I think, I don't know if that's going to help or not. And then they come back and said, that helped, it makes a difference in their lives.
Yeah. I had a guy 2 weeks ago made an appointment with me through my assistant. and somehow I didn't see it on the calendar. So he drove an hour and a half down, sat in a coffee shop for half an hour, finally emailed my assistant, who emailed me and said, "Hey, where are you?" I said, "Oops." By the time I was able to meet with this guy, it was an hour later. He met with me for 2 hours and drove an hour and a half home. And he wanted to meet with me because through our podcast and ministry, I'd become like a father to him, even though I had never known him, because he had no father engaged. His father left when he was an infant, and he'd never seen his father for 33 years. But that's normal today, common.
I know. No, I think so. And I love what you're doing, and that, just being that model, that role model for people and sharing what we've learned is so important. So let's talk about the mistakes that you see guys making when they're in that season of life.
Well, I think when you're in that season, you are constricted because that stress bubble is expanded. If you're a good man, if you're a guy who wants to do it right, and especially if you have no script. So we have a bumper sticker that's coming out. We should have it here any day. And it basically says on a bumper sticker, the mistake I think guys make in the bubble. And here it is. If I'm a Christian man living in the bubble, my priorities in life, my calendar, my scheduling, my finances, everything I do should flow like this. God is greater than my wife. My wife is greater than my kids. My kids are greater than my work. That's awesome. So it has to flow that way. And so the problem is, especially with second and third marriages, is we hear this narrative. Hey, I just told my wife that my kids are more important than her. And I'm like, well, bro, that's why you've been divorced. Because your wife is never greater than your kids. Even if these are your biological kids and they're her stepkids, she's still the priority. You have to make her that. And you have to make, your relationship with Christ a priority. So work, kind of falls down the road there to like a fourth priority. The problem is our default as men is to make work our priority above everybody else in the name of providing for the family. But what they don't realize is that our families require much more than physical provision. And the damage that most men do has nothing to do with physical provision. It has to do with heart care and soul care, and not making the priorities of their family members something that they're willing to sacrifice their work for.
Absolutely. And I think it's so easy because I think work is easier for us. We can go there, we can accomplish something, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes then what I've seen, and you may have seen the same thing, that sometimes if we're really successful in our work, we try to apply those same principles to our wife and our kids. And then we think, what's wrong with them?
Yeah, it does not. It does not work. One of the things I tell guys, and this is so important, I think that men in the stress bubble of life, specifically, because that's where it's happening, the kids are in the home, they need to show up in the lives of their wife and their kids until it's almost boring. In other words, their kids would be shocked if they didn't show up, because they always show up. You look at Jesus in John chapter 4, the Bible says, he went through Samaria. John records he had to go through Samaria. So there's a little disdain. They get to where they're at. They're near Sychar, I think it was. And it says Jesus sat down by the well because he was weary from his journey. And the disciples went into town to get food. A woman came and Jesus said, "Can you give me something to drink?" So Jesus was tired, hungry, and thirsty, and showed up to minister to that woman anyway, and changed her life and changed the community's life through her. And I see that, and I think that's our mantra as men. Even though we're hungry, thirsty, and tired in the bubble, which describes the entire 25 years you're in the stress bubble, is that we have to show up. And when we don't show up, that's saying that we're not making the most important thing. We need to show up for Jesus. We need to show up for our local Christian community. We need to show up for our wife. We need to show up for our kids. We just need to show up. And I think that if I can just tell guys, you don't have to be flashy. You don't have to be, Superman. You just need to show up. Maybe that S on your chest stands for that. Show up.
So do you think a lot of guys don't, just because they don't know what to do?
I really do. I think what I have found, and maybe Kim, maybe you can affirm this or confirm it for me. I have found that when men get confused or when men feel disrespected, they shut down. They isolate themselves in their man cave. They isolate themselves on the couch or in front of the computer screen or their game system. Men tend to isolate. And I think when a man does not know who he's supposed to be as a man, which that book right there I wrote, that book defines manhood, and it gives Strong Men, Dangerous Time. It gives men a target to shoot at. Because I have found if a man has a hill and he's told to conquer that, he will. But if he doesn't know what the hill where the hill even is, he'll tend to be paralyzed. And so I think you're 100% right. I think a lot of guys just have no idea what to do, so they do nothing.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what the stat you were saying with half the young men growing up in homes without a dad. And so the model isn't there. And then some of them that have a dad, they don't have a good model.
Many of them, right? Yes.
And so then they come into marriage and they're pretty unequipped. And I don't think a lot of times we realize it until we're in the throes of marriage. Does that make sense?
Oh, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing in my marriage. I don't think I caught a marriage rhythm until I was about 10 years in.
Yeah.
I was still trying to figure out, well, the problem with your marriage 10 years in is you've got 3 kids now. So now you go from a man you're single, you're living wild and free, to now you're married, now you have kids, you have no idea what you're doing, and nobody ever told you, and you have no model. That's why older men are so important to be models. That's why these young men in the stress bubble, they have to get into some kind of Christian community with an intergenerational group of men. I mean, I'm learning. I'm connected with guys in their 70s and 80s who are helping me to understand what does sex look like at 75 or 80? What does marriage look like? How do I handle my grandchildren? How do I handle fitness without, I was at the doctor this morning for a back injury for something stupid at the gym yesterday. How do I navigate as my body breaks down? How do I navigate all these things? We need older guys to do that. And then us older guys need the younger guys to inspire us with their naive, going to conquer the world mentality. Man, that fires me up,
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah. I don't know why our bodies don't continue to respond the way they did when we were younger,
Well, I think they will, man. I got a theory on heaven. I think when we get to heaven, we're going to have 5-year-old brains and 20-year-old bodies. So and then a full head of hair, baby. I mean, you're doing all right, but I can't wait to get those curls back.
I agree. Oh yeah, that's definitely a good plus to look forward to.
Absolutely, it's coming. It's coming.
So, talk about, you've kind of alluded to some of the problems and stuff that you guys went through, and so how did you handle that stress bubble for you and in your marriage?
It's funny. I think we did a couple very specific things. If guys, I know we have a lot of women listening, and I know we have about a lot of men listening. It's almost 50-50 with your audience. So we did a couple very practical things. So it's really easy for a guy like me to come in and share pie in the sky stuff, right? I was a pastor. I the whole time I struggled to tell men, do what I did, because I was paid to be a Christian. You know what I mean? I there were certain expectations placed upon me because of my ministry position. But once you got inside of my house, those restrictions were lifted, and I had to be a father and a husband. And so we did a couple things very, very well. Honestly, Kim, I would say we did 3 things very, very well. And these are very practical things. They're very easy. So for men and women listening, here's the first thing we did. We had a sacred cow date night every Thursday night. In fact, the little gal that came up and babysat for us was in my youth group. That woman grew into this beautiful Christian woman because her parents at the time were not involved in church. She's now the executive pastor of a church of about 800. And a lot of it is because she just watched us do life together and do our date night together. And her and her husband have a date night now as well. And so for us, and when I say date night, Kim, we would go to Burger King when they had 99-cent burgers.
Yeah.
We would go watch the sunset. We would go to Goodwill, and I'd follow her around as she looked for deals. It was just about being together and saying, you're important. So every Thursday night we had a date night. Monday nights we had a family night where we would go just do something as a family. Again, super lightweight. But the thing that was really important for us as a family was every breakfast. Now I know some guys go to work very early, but for us, I was out 3 nights a week in ministry stuff. So every morning I would make them breakfast, because remember, my wife didn't cook, and I love to cook. So I would make some kind of, eggs and bacon, sausage and bacon, pancakes, some kind of breakfast. We'd sit at the table. and we would do some kind of just real short little devotional and pray together. And we would be out 15 minutes and they're gone off to school. And this is from the time they were, 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, little teeny kids until out of high school. And we just made that a religious type of thing for us. So we did that religiously. And then the third thing that we did is we prayed and read. We read to our kids and prayed over them every night before we went to bed. And so, in fact, it was kind of cool. My son, about a couple months ago, I heard him praying over his daughter. He prayed the exact prayer. God, I pray that you would protect her from sin and sickness, disease, illness, and injury. And then he added something because she was a girl and help her make wise boys to choice. I mean, he prayed a girl prayer, but I thought he's praying the exact prayer that we prayed over him every night of his life. So those are all really easy things. Breakfast is 15 minutes. Or if you're an early morning work dad, get home for dinner. I think if a dad is working so much that he can't be home for dinner or breakfast, I think that guy's out of order. And he's gonna have a problem on the back end of the stress bubble. So I think every guy listening can be at breakfast or dinner. And I realize if some guys have if they're firefighters or policemen and they're doing these 4-day ons, whatever, I realize that's different. But you can still be there for most of it, and you can do a breakfast and dinner if you're home for 4 days straight. So those were the 3 very practical things that were game changers for us.
That's so good. And I love what you said about the breakfast or the dinner. Because I think when we did the same thing with our kids, and I think the consistency of it is what made the difference.
Yep.
They talked about things that they probably wouldn't have talked about otherwise. It was just like that, just be kind of time to share what your day going to look like, maybe pray, whatever. But it was a connection point at the beginning of the day that I think was so important.
Well, and I got to tell you, Kim, so now I don't want our listeners to get a wrong picture here. I mean, we had knockdown physical fights at the table, like kids come over the table. We had no farting at the table. If you fart at the table, you have to do 10 push-ups, no burping, 10 push-ups. We had another rule that I won't explain because it's a PG-13, because when you have 3 boys in the morning, we don't want mom to see too much, So we had so it was blood and guts. This is the blood and guts of family life, right? It wasn't all sitting there singing the doxology together. You know what I mean? So I just want our listeners to know that, man, this is something we had to fight for this. Get down now. Breakfast is ready. I mean, we had to fight for it. And, but it worked out beautifully for us. And I think that anything worthwhile in the stress bubble needs to be fought for because you are so limited on what you can do in there.
Yeah, because you have to fight for it. It's easy to give up on it. And especially kids get a certain age, and it's kind of like they're not going to, at some age, they're going to run down the stairs and jump back in their chair and be ready for breakfast. And then it's like, where are you? You're not even out of bed yet, those kind of things. The other thing I loved about the way you kind of broadened the whole date night deal, I think it made me remember one of the things I learned probably 7 or 8 years into marriage. I couldn't understand why when Nancy would go shopping, she wanted me to go. I hated to go shopping, going to a department store, and I wanted to stay on that little walkway through to get where we were going. And she was zigzagging through everything. And when she finally told me, said, I want you to see I want you to be there when I try something on. I want to know whether you like it or not. She wanted a relationship thing in that. And once I figured that out, it was like, okay, I can do that, Yeah,
well, you men, we're hunters, right? I go shopping. I'm going to go get a pair of pants. I'm going to sure I'm out of here. I learned with my wife, shopping was not about buying anything. It was experiencing. So when a woman goes shopping, I think the word experiencing is synonymous to that word. So when a man goes shopping with his wife, as he goes experiencing with his wife, he needs to be with her side by side. Oh, you look pretty. I don't like that dress. I don't like that plaid on you. I don't think, with my wife, I tell her, you look better in earth tones. You don't look good in bright tones, except for pink. I mean, I have all these things laid out. I know what she looks good in, right? Yeah. And so I think this is what the man does. He's with her. He's experiencing with her. And then when he goes home at night, guess what? She wants to make love to him because she's been so connected because he's just experiencing shopping with her.
Yeah. And it didn't make sense to us. It probably will never make sense, but it's the truth, and I think a lot of it is for guys. It's just accepting that's really the way our wives are made. That's really what's important to them. And we're not going to change them.
No, my wife asks the same question every day of her life to me. And she never verbalizes it, but she asks it nonetheless. And the question she's been asking me for 32 years is this: am I beautiful enough for you to pursue me? That's what the question she asks. And guess what? My granddaughter ask the same question. She'll actually say to me, Papa, but I'm your princess. My 2 daughters now, my daughters in love, they're asking the same question. So I've got to let them know over and over again, you're beautiful, you're worthy, it's the same song every day of their life. And that's what shopping does. It says, yes, you are worthy. I'm doing something I hate because you're worthy of me pursuing you.
I think sometimes we don't realize how tough it is to be a woman in our culture.
Oh, can you imagine?
No.
It's
so hard.
I mean, my wife is aging. She's a beautiful 54-year-old woman. And, she, oh, my wrinkles. Oh, they have these words for these now. They're called a crow's feet. Then her 11s are right here. I'm like, every wrinkle. Do you know this? Did you know every wrinkle has a name? These are the 11s. These are crow's feet. Go home and ask your wife, what are these called? Oh, these are my 11s. She'll know. And so what I'm saying is, and they're inundated with Botox and breast implants. And we're noticing, my wife and I went to Disney. We're like, they're getting butt implants even. I mean, everything's an implant. And so our women are growing up in this day and age. And man, I'll tell you what, you hear more talk about don't objectify me or fat shame me than you ever heard. Yet we fat shame, we objectify women more than we've ever objectified women probably in the history of the world. So you can only imagine what they're going through. And so when the one man in their life who's called to love them more than any other person on the planet loves them,
yes,
that man needs to pursue her because she is I don't say, you're going to laugh at this, Kim. I hope you get this. I never say my wife is my best friend because she kind of looks at me funny because I know I'm not her best friend. She has a best friend. I say, I know I'm not your best friend, but you are my most important person on the planet. And she goes, well, you are the most important person on the planet to me, but you're not my best friend. So guys often say, my wife is my best friend. And they kind of roll their eyes because they know they've got a best friend. But as men, we have to realize our wife is the most important person on the planet. And it's our job to make one person feel special.
And I think that the whole thing with pursuing is that we just have to be conscious how important that is because it's easy to quit. Yeah. And like when you talked about the 4 things, it's so easy to take number 4, work, and pursue that because people think I'm great there and people are going to tell me how good I am and I'm successful there. And so work. Yeah.
I've had to learn.
That's not where it's got to be.
No, I've had to learn. I heard a guy, the late Reggie Campbell, wrote a book called What Radical Husbands Do. And he said something very simple and profound in that book. He said, you need to love what your wife loves. So I began to fall in love with what Shanna loves. And in doing so, it's like you said earlier, you fell in love with shopping because your wife, it was important to her. So I've had to fall in love with certain things. I hated the beach. I hated swimming. But I'm scuba certified. I'm scuba certified now. I snorkel all the time. I'm a sunbathing, expert. You know what I mean? Because that's what she loves. And so when we fall in love with what she loves, it's our way of saying, I love you and you're beautiful and you're worthy of me pursuing you into an area that I'm not necessarily excited about.
And I think over time, what I've seen, I really have grown to love some of those things. We just got back from a week at the beach in the Caribbean. I've gotten where I love laying on the beach.
Oh, me too. It's glorious.
It's just watching the waves and talking and reading and it's just hanging out. And she, we grow. She said, I feel so close to you. On the way home on the plane, she goes, I feel so close to you. And it was just, because she was the total object of everything for that week.
My wife, when we were so poor in ministry for the first probably 13 years of our ministry, we never did a vacation with an airplane, never went any place fancy. We just went to relatives' homes. Yeah. But in 2005, she said, we're going to Hawaii. And I was so mad at her because she booked it in October. I'm like, okay, that's in the middle of hunting season. It's in the middle of football season. I said, what are you doing? And she just kind of commanded it. No, we're going. Somebody gave us a timeshare. We're going. So we went over there. I ended up baptizing my oldest son there. We had a phenomenal time of, it was unbelievable. It was an aha moment for me, to be honest with you. And I realized, man, I need to follow her into some of this stuff because she really is a better judge of what will help a relationship than I am.
Absolutely. And we've got to value that. We've got to learn to value that in them because you're right. Our wives have so much wisdom in so many areas that we don't.
I feel like she's the value it. Yeah, I feel like my wife. I think women are the thermometer. Mm. They go, hey, here's what the temperature of the relationship, boy. And then as men, we tend to be the thermostat, so we can fix it. The problem is when a man doesn't hear his wife saying we're here, and he doesn't fix it till it's down here and too late. So we as men have to be very in tune to what our wife is saying. Hey, here's the temperature. In fact, I ask my wife at least once a month, hey, 1 to 10, where are we? I just rank her, and she always ranks it lower than I rank it.
Always. Absolutely. I've seen that in counseling room. I've seen it with absolutely, because we're content just with the being so-so.
I know. She said the other day, I said, where are we, baby? She goes, we're an 8. I go, 8? We're better than that. She goes, well, I just want to leave room for improvement. I'm like, are you kidding me? It was a 10 and you lowered it just for
That's hilarious. That's so funny.
Man, well, now you got to know our marriage.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about what it means to be a strong man.
Yeah. So, well, obviously this book behind me is called Strong Men, Dangerous Times. Yes. And so people, when I talk about strong and weak men, I think, let me just clarify. So by strong, I mean solid. I mean resolute, because I'm a big guy. I played sports. I'm a weightlifter. So when people see me walk into the room, they see my stature and they say, oh, that's a strong man. I can't fit that. And here's what I say, no. Men come in all shapes and sizes. Mm-hmm. Men look like a lot of different things. Some men are poets. Some men are lumberjacks. Some men are athletes. Some men are, computer programmers. Some guys drive lifted trucks. Some guys drive Volkswagen Bugs. It doesn't matter what you look like. And I want to be very clear on that. It does not matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you live. What matters is how you act. A man is as a man does. So when I talk about a strong man, I think that a man does 5 things that separate him from a male. So we hear a lot of this toxic masculinity concepts and phrases. I think the word is oxymoronic, the phrase, because masculinity is not toxic. The problem is toxic males. So the issue is, males are the problem with 90% of the world's problem, but men are the solution. So how do we transition a male who's disengaged from his family in the stress bubble? Maybe he's physically absent. Maybe he's emotionally absent. How do we take a male over here and grow him into a man? Well, I think it's 5 things. And I think it's like a mountain. If you imagine a mountain, the base of the mountain is a man who is protecting integrity. It all starts with integrity. You have to start there. And then as you climb the mountain, that climb is what I call fighting apathy. It's where you're resisting all of the things trying to push you back down the mountain. Your time schedule, a culture that says you're less than, that says you're toxic, a culture that says you shouldn't lead, that all of these things that are pushing you down the mountain, that you need to resist those things and stay true to biblical obedience. And the summit of manhood is pursuing God passionately, because I've never seen a guy become the man that God wanted him to be without radical devotion to his creator. It makes sense, right? Like, how can I ever be the man God called me to be without radical devotion to him? I don't have a roadmap without Jesus being Lord of my life. And when I talk to guys all the time, I say, hey man, theology is really simple, man. You got to give your life to the God who made you if you ever want to become the guy you've been created to be. And so the backside of that mountain, so we have protecting integrity, fighting apathy, pursuing God passionately. The backside of that mountain is what I call leading courageously. It's where I see a lot of times guys get casual. Oh, I'm a Christian. I go to church, and they get really casual, and they just kind of let the church take over for them. And they don't, instead of leaning into the mountain, they lean back. Well, when you lean back, when you're descending a mountain, you start to slip because you lose traction. And so we really encourage men to do something, to do anything, just do something. Some of the things I mentioned in our podcast today. And then the last thing is finishing strong, which finishing strong to me is not what you think. It's not finishing your life strong. Finishing strong to me, as I address men on the stress bubble, is this: finishing every day strong, compounding over time. So we're telling the guys that the people who will weep at your funeral will either weep tears of mourning or tears of regret, because you will not be remembered for what you did 9 to 5. You will be remembered for what you did from 5 to 9 p.m.
That's good.
When your family's in the home, those are the ones who'll be weeping at your funeral, not your co-workers. So this is really important that we help the guys to realize those 5 attributes that will make them a strong man.
That's so good. I mean, all of that. And I agree with all of it. And it makes such sense. I think it just, we just have to take that step to do that. And I think you're right. It starts with integrity.
Yeah.
That we are going to be who God created us to be. We're going to figure that out and stay on that path.
Yeah. So many of us, we're all broken men. We're all fractured.
Yeah.
So because we're fractured, we come to God as a fraction. But what God loves to do is he loves to put the broken pieces together again, right? So as I love one of my life verses is Philippians 1:6. I'm confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. That word completion is integrity. God wants his men whole, not fractured. And so we have to, and it's really funny. It's really interesting. I have found that when I interact with men and women, that men care much more about integrity than women. I'm not saying women don't have integrity. I'm just saying that with integrity, if you tell a man you're going to show up and you don't show up, he'll never look at you the same again. Like when men, integrity is such a big deal because men, the default of a woman is to love, right? Their love is their default language. A man's default language is respect. So if you lose the respect of a man, it's over. And if you lack respect, it's over. So this manhood concept does not start with God. He is the summit. It starts down here with integrity, because I've known and you've known a lot of pastors who were great men of God who had no integrity and they fell. Absolutely. I've known tremendous non-Christian guys who had tremendous integrity. Yeah. So you can be a man and not be a Christian man, but you can't be the man God called you to be without radical devotion to Jesus Christ. But I have found that with manhood, it starts at this integrity level. Even in the church, even at a young age, we teach our young boys, show up on time, shake people's hand firmly, look them in the eye, be honest. We teach them these concepts of integrity. Absolutely. Even before we teach them about Jesus sometimes,
Yes.
Did you lie to me? I mean, tell the truth all the time, that type of thing.
It is important. And I think we have to hear that message today, because I don't think maybe it's valued and maybe it's not valued as much. Does that make sense?
Oh, I had a guy tell me, I've got a book coming out in the fall called Dialed In, and I've got some top shelf guys endorsing this book. And one of the guys I asked, he said, I have a whole committee now that I have to go through a process about who I endorse now, because this pastor X, who's no longer, everything he had collapsed because of a moral failure, he really hurt our organization because he lied about the endorsement. And I'm just saying, we're seeing a collapse, I think, in a lot of ways of integrity, even among spiritual leaders. And so I think we need to realize it's very, very important.
Well, and what the consequences are when we don't.
Yeah.
It's such a ripple effect, just like you were talking about there in your situation.
Well, you look at the fatherlessness that we're experiencing today. We're looking at, 40% of children are born out of wedlock. To me, those are integrity problems. They're obviously they're morality problems. Obviously, they're spiritual problems. But when a man produces a human being and doesn't show up, that's an integrity issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. When I meet men who have children they've abandoned, I lose all respect, because they can control that.
Absolutely.
That's a choice. It's conscious.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Or some, I've had a couple situations where the guy may see the child, but he didn't pay anything. Doesn't pay anything. And it's just like, how do you do that? Yeah,
you're not hurting the baby mama, you're hurting the child.
Absolutely.
And you're hurting yourself, that relationship. When that child is old enough to know better, they're not going to want to choose. This is one of the things that I believe, that when the children are in my home, I control that relationship because I said so. But when my children leave the home, now they control the narrative of my relationship with them.
Absolutely.
And how I've handled that stress bubble is going to control the next 40 years of my life with that child as they go into adulthood.
Yeah, you said something at the very beginning of our children becoming friends as adults, and that's one of the things that I cherish now. That my kids are really good friends and really enjoy and want to be around us, and we want to be around them. And it's just, I don't know. It's just like a completion. I mean, because you knew them from the day they were born.
Yeah.
You saw them go through all kinds of stuff, and now you see them as adults, living the life that I think God has for them.
Well, isn't that where true wealth is found? I mean, really.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know guys who are multimillionaires and they're estranged from their children. They would trade their life with mine any day of the week.
Absolutely.
Because my life is not filled with regret. I'm not a perfect parent, and I've damaged my kids. Obviously, they're humans. But when I find out I've damaged them, I have to go back. Like I made a major mistake in my marriage for the first 15 years of my marriage. 20 years, I did not frame my wife in the way that my kids needed to see her. I portrayed her, framed her, portraited her as a crazy mom who wanted to be too clean. I just did not frame her well. So I've had to go back and apologize to my kids and just say, hey, I had to repent of this. This is wrong. Don't do this in your relationship. Right.
Yes.
But I mean, this is part of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, in that apology, though, I'm so glad you said that, because that goes such a long way.
Yeah,
if when they hear that, they can reframe the whole thing and reframe you.
Yeah, and they realize, oh, Dad does realize he did that wrong, or oh, I never realized Dad was doing that, and that is wrong.
Maybe they took that as that's the way it's supposed to be, and I've had to go back. I've had to go back, and I remember. My two oldest boys, we were on a little hunting trip, and I said, hey, have I damaged you guys? I keep hearing guys talking about damage and woundedness. And they said, well, you made us go to church. And I said, that wasn't because I was a pastor. That was because I was a Christian. And that's something, I mean, why did you make us do that? I go, well, because we follow Jesus, and that's what we do. But they thought it was because of the church. Interesting.
So they were like, well, we don't like the church because you did that. I go, that had nothing to do with the church, boys. That has everything to do with me and Mom.
Well, it's so good that they said that, because it gives you, because sometimes kids make assumptions just on the information they have. And so that gives us chances to reframe that for them.
And that's what we had to do. Yeah, it's absolutely right.
So good. So for the guys listening today, what's one step of engagement that you would want them to take?
I would say, focus on I would say if you are not having one meal a day with your family, do it. The whole family sitting down, and you're going to have to fight for that thing. And I would say if you're already doing that, I applaud you. If you're already doing one meal a day with your family, I applaud you. So your part 2, your assignment is to make sure that you finish every day strong. When you come home from work, you are an engaged dad, loving on Mom, holding your young children, or playing sports with your elementary school children, or coaching your junior high age kids in sports, but you're engaged. Make sure that you're engaged. And, when the kids are, as they get older into their teen years, they're not going to need that engagement as much, as far as like all the way up until bedtime. They'll go to bed on their own, but they need you to finish your day strong. And your wife needs you to finish her day strong, whether she's been at work all day or with the kids all day. She needs you to pursue her. And I know it's asking a lot, but we're men, and that's what men do.
I totally complete. One of the things that someone shared with me early in marriage, our kids were really young, but said, hey, when you leave on your drive home, your commute, which wasn't that long, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, said, pray, leave your day with God, and then start asking God to prepare you for what happens when you walk through that door.
Absolutely.
And it made all the difference in the world. It just reframed it. And so I could come in and I could find Nancy and see what she was doing, what she needed from me. I could play with the kids, whatever. You just make that transition, because if you bring your work home, you're not going to be completely there.
No, 100%. I mean, I used to come home when the kids were little. I would just come home, I'd lay on my back, and I would just throw them in the air for hours.
Oh yeah.
Or we'd get on the trampoline and jump, or you have to force it.
Yeah.
And you've got, 7 o'clock, it starts winding down. You start reading to them, put them down at 8. You've got an hour and a half, 2 hours with your bride. It's just the way it is. I mean, I chose to have the children. The kids didn't choose. I chose. So I need to choose to father them. I need to choose to love my wife.
And all of those seasons, they don't last very long.
They do not.
And so if you miss it, you can't go back. And so that's what I tell you. You just don't miss it. Enjoy every season, because they're all special.
Yep.
Maybe not changing diapers. I still question that season.
Hey, buddy. I mean, my wife and I figure we combined 7,000 diapers changed over the course of time. And I bet I changed 3,000 of them. Yeah. I mean, it's just part of the program, right? I mean, I signed up for it.
It's got to be done.
True statement. But the funny thing is when I was people say, oh, go so fast. And I'm going to be really honest, Kim, when I was in the stress bubble, it did not go fast. It drug on and on. It was pain. It was hard. But I can't get it back. And I'm glad that I stepped up and did what I needed to do in that bubble, even though it was so hard, because I'm reaping the rewards of that now, because now that I'm on the other end of it, I can't get it back. Interestingly enough, I spent 22 years in the stress bubble. I'm going to spend the next 40 out of it. So this stress bubble window is not a big window, but it is probably the most significant window that we can invest in while we're raising our children and investing in our marriage.
Absolutely. Because it's going to reap the benefits.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's talk to the wives for just a minute. We've talked a lot about the guys and all this kind of stuff, but what advice or encouragement do you give a wife who's listening that just wants her husband to engage in their marriage and family?
So my wife bought a shirt several years ago and it said, "Tell me I'm pretty and feed me tacos." And so I thought, you know what? It's so true. I do that every day. I feed her and I tell her she's pretty. You know what I mean? And I tell her I love her. So if I had a shirt for my wife, it would say, "Tell me I'm awesome." And the next line would say, "And keep telling me I'm awesome." So men need their wives to know that the affirmation that our wives give us is life-giving.
Yeah.
Conversely, when a woman disrespects a man, I'm not talking about positional disrespect. I'm not saying I'm the man, you need to respect me. I'm saying that when she communicates in a disrespectful, nagging tone, it's like taking a baseball bat and hit him between the legs. He goes down. In fact, Emerson Eggerichs in his book, Love and Respect, I don't know if you've read that book, but
yes,
I was really impacted by the book because he drew out of the 3 household codes in Colossians 3, Ephesians 5, and then a little bit in 1 Peter chapter 3, specifically Ephesians 5, he addressed that in that section of scripture, the man is told to love the wives, it's 4 or 5 times. But the wife is never commanded to love her husband. But at the end of that section, it says, "Wives, respect your husband."
Yeah.
And I thought it was really insightful of Eggerichs. He said, women are made to love. Their bodies are made to nurture. They've got hips. My wife can carry babies longer than me. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, she puts them on the hip. They have these breasts that feed. I mean, everything about a woman is made to love. I mean, I just, admire the female body in that way. But men, our bodies are utilitarian.
Yeah.
There's nothing about our bodies that are made to love. Our bodies are made to respect. And our default is respect, where a woman's default is love. She just does it naturally. That's why she's such a great thermometer in the relationship. But what she doesn't do naturally, based on Genesis, when God said your desire will be to control your husband, she doesn't respect him well. And so God asked the man to do something that he does not default to, which is love. And he asked the woman to do something she does not default to, which is respect. And so I would if I could say anything to women, I would say a couple things. One is be very careful what you say to your husband, because if you shut him down, that secretary at his office will start looking pretty good. Yeah. You just need to be very careful. I'm not saying there's never a good excuse. Adultery is always negative. Divorce is always negative. But I think a lot of times when you talk to these guys, they just got hammered year after year, disrespected by their wife. And then one woman complimented them. It just ruined it. It went the other way. Yeah. So I would say be careful to respect your husbands, because if you don't, that's hurting him. I would rather be respected by my wife than loved, personally. So that's me personally. And so I think that is really, really important. And I think the other thing, this is going to sound a little bit weird. I do believe that men are called to lead the family. I do believe that. I believe, though, that the woman, as the temperature gauge, as the thermometer in the relationship, if the man is the head, she needs to really be the neck. My wife really directed me as a household leader, saying, "Hey, our relationship is here, so I need you to step it up." our kids are here. We need to do this. We're going to Hawaii. She just commanded it. So I would tell women, like, if you're married to a good man, he was a good man when you married him, so I'm hoping he's still a good man. He needs you to direct him relationally and respectfully, but help him, teach him how to love you. Teach him how to love you. Teach him how to engage. We were driving just yesterday. My wife said, honey, she said, what would make our granddaughter feel real special if you just went down and had lunch with her one day. I go, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm like, here she is. I'm 8 years old, and she's telling me how to. And I'm going, you know what? Dang it! I'm going to go have breakfast with the princess or lunch with the princess. Because she's directing me, right? She's helped me. So I tell women, lovingly, respectfully, train your husbands in how to love. We really want to know, and we really have no clue. Like when you went shopping with your wife, she said, "Listen, I don't care about you buying stuff. I just want you to be with me and pursue me."
Absolutely.
So we need help. Coach us, ladies.
No, I agree. And I think for the ladies to just ask God each day to help you be the wife your husband needs.
Yes.
And put part of it in God's hands and see what he does. I think he'll prompt you. I think you'll see things that maybe you're not seeing. And then I think as a husband, you're right, that respect. I mean, I made me think the first time I ever did a TV interview, and it was a local station. And everybody in the studio, we finished. They were telling me how good I did. Well, I get in the car and Nancy calls me and she goes, "Man, you hit a home run." And it was like, I don't care what anybody else thought.
That's all I
don't care
need
what
to hear.
Anybody else thought. That's the only thing I need. And it just hit me right then. Oh my gosh, how important that is to me when she does something like that for me.
The opposite of respect is affirmation. We just need our wives to tell us. I preached at church 2 weeks ago. My wife said, that was the best sermon I've ever heard from you. I mean, you know what? I could have floated.
Yeah.
We just long. I don't know what it is about that when our wives affirm us. We just want to be told we're awesome. We just need, hey, you're the best lover. You're the handsomest man in the room. You're so strong. Oh man, I would follow you to hell and back. I mean, we just need them to tell us that. And guess what? We'll become that.
Oh yeah.
The good ones will. The good ones will.
When our wives speak into us, I want them to know how much power they have in that.
So much power.
Oh man.
There's so much power. If they only knew. I mean, we think, oh man, if you just give me sex is power. No. You tell me I'm awesome and I'll live. I have a couple of friends of mine that are in sexless marriages because of wives' health reasons or whatever.
Sure.
But these women are masters at verbally affirming their men. And these men almost could care less. They just go because, man, my wife tells me I'm going to, I'm a stud, and so we really, really need our wives to do that. So the negative part of that is disrespect. The positive is just affirmation. Absolutely. We just need it. We're desperate for it.
And, because Nancy's so good at it, if somebody else says something to me, it's okay. Another woman says something, it's okay. But I get it when I'm hearing it from her. That's much more than enough.
Well, and when you hear it from another woman, it just kind of blow it off. It doesn't affect you. But if you're getting nagged at home and disrespected at home, and it never ends, and then you go into your office and your secretary, I say secretaries, it seems like it's always the secretary says, "Hey, if I was your wife, I would never do that to you. You're so awesome." Oh. Well, now he starts going to her for affirmation.
Yeah.
And so I've got 4 female staff on my team, and I told them, "Hey, listen, there's only one for me, and we are keeping this. It's business only."
Absolutely.
Because there's one woman for me. And so, it's never been an awkward thing in 32 years. I've never had an issue because I get it at home.
Well, and when you invest in it like that in your marriage is good. All that other stuff to me over the year just fails and just, it's not something to compare. It's just like, so.
Yeah. Agree 100%.
Yeah.
I've got too much invested in my marriage, and she's got too much invested in me. She told me one time, we talk about if we ever died, what happened. And she said, I would never remarry. I go, what? Was I that great of a husband? She goes, no, you just take too long to train. I don't have the energy.
What a great answer.
Yeah. I'm like, well, dang, I'd get married real fast. I don't know. Training, what's that?
Oh, that's funny. Last question. What are you loving about your marriage today?
I'm just loving the fact that because my wife was a great thermometer, we made our marriage a priority. And because our marriage was so much work, our personalities clashed so much, we really had to focus on our marriage. And today, with our kids out of the house, we just love being together. I mean, honestly, we just love being together. I love being with her. She's a flight attendant. When I'm gone speaking or she's gone working, we just love to come together. I just love being around my wife. And I think that is because we fought real hard for our marriage and we just love being around each other.
It's so good. And it made me think, one thing that saddens me a lot is when I see so many couples divorce early in the marriage that don't fight through like you guys did, like we did. Because when you fight through, there is some great rewards on the other end of that. Yeah. And some is along the way. But you're building something and you're learning and growing and building something to really cherish. And I think, when you get to the empty nest age, like you are, like we are, you just think, wow, I'm so glad we fought for this. Marriage is not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it is worth the fight. It is just worth it. I was a pastor asking God to kill my wife. Doesn't get any worse than that. And now I've got this wonderful marriage. You've just got to fight through it. Aren't you glad God doesn't answer all our prayers?
Oh, man. I know. I'm just praying I die first now, because if she ever died first, I'd feel horrible. Confession, just being honest, man.
Yeah. Jim, this has been awesome. This has been a great conversation. I love what you do. The book is Strong Men, Dangerous Times.
Yeah.
And where else can people find you?
You know what? Honestly, we're all over social media, and you've got a lot of women. We are apparently TikTok famous, so we're there. Everything is under the Men in the Arena. So if they look in there, they'll find me, or they can go to meninthearena.org, and we've got all that on our website. Yeah,
the website's great. I was messing around with it yesterday. It's got some great stuff on it. Really well done. Love what you do, what God's called you to do in this part of your life. And
thank you.
Things like this change the world.
Yep. Well, God is good. We just got to say yes to him.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim.
Have a great day, man.
You too.